On this episode of the Launchpad podcast, we're going to talk about the fight for wing minutes on the Rockets starting rotation, how will Alperen Sengun be used to start the season, and if you're open to the possibility of, with the cap space the Rockets have next offseason, bringing on James Harden back to the team. So it's going to be a really fun episode. Uh, Stay with us on the Launchpad podcast.
Houston, Roger, we copy and standing by for your TV.
They throw it up, oh, there goes Jalen Green. Humans can't fly. Rebound picked up by Green, who's back in. Plays it ahead of more, back to Green! Oh, it ain't time for Thanksgiving, but there's plenty of yams to go around for everyone.
Hello and welcome into another episode of the Launchpad podcast presented by Clutch City Control Room. I'm your host, Paulo Alves, and you can find me on Twitter at Paulo Alves NBA. You can find the pod at Clutch City Control Room, and if you go in the description there, you can find the link tree with the YouTube link to all the platforms, with the YouTube link and all of the platforms that the pod's on. We want to thank y'all for all the comments y'all have left in the previous episodes of the podcast. We'll continue to give it our best to try and reply to every single one of y'all. Today, as a first, because, well, not a first, because Don's been leaving me for quite a bit lately, but we are joined by Brad, which you might have seen on the Bradeaux and Will show on this channel as well. Brad, go ahead and tell the people about where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm not your ordinary host, but I'm filling in for Dante's at the Astros game. But yeah, I'm on Clutch City Control Room as well. Of course, I'm a host on the Bradeaux and Will show. You can check us out over there on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me at Bradeaux NBA for all your favorite Rocket stats and content, all that good stuff. So if you want to look at my content, I'm right there.
And our special guest for today's episode is Frank. You probably know him from the spaces on Twitter. Frank, go ahead and tell the people where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, they can find me at ftank58. Also, I'm a content creator for the HTX Chop Shop YouTube page. We have a Twitter page. I'm just trying to bring great basketball content to everybody. Appreciate y'all for bringing me out. Let's chop up some basketball.
Yeah, the pleasure is ours. You've been for sure doing that. Yeah, and so our first segment for today is a discussion that's been going on pretty much ever since the draft, but especially since Summer League. Depending on who you ask on Rockets Twitter and in Rockets fans in general, one of the biggest questions going into the season is the wing rotation, right? You've got Keishan Tate pretty much locked into one of those spots. You've got Eric Gordon, but then you have KJ Martin, Tari Eason, even Usman Garuba to some extent if you want to play him at the 4, right? And you also got Jabari Smith also locked into one of those forward positions. And so that leaves the Rockets in a position where they have too many young players that they want to play, and they don't have enough spots for them all to play. And so that's going to be our first segment. I don't know, Frank, you are our KJ Martin specialist. I think
Yeah.
I think just trying to predict, I think KJ Martin is probably your favorite out of these three. But go ahead and make your case. Who do you think?
Okay.
Start?
Well,
Who
he's
you bring off the bench?
out of the three between Tari, KJ, and Tate, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, okay. Let me. First of all, I out of the class of 2020, 2021 rookies, I would say KJ is my favorite. Just because he's everything that you want in that position. I think people, when I say that I like him better than Tate, and everybody can cap right now because they act like they love Tate, but I vividly remember everybody saying that they wanted KJ to start during the season. That was a topic that we all kind of talked about during the spaces, in y'all spaces and our spaces. People got in arguments over it. The reason we all saw what was happening during the season is that KJ fits the prototype of a player that we need next to players that are ball dominant, like Kevin Porter Jr., like Jalen Green, and for this season, like Alperen Sengun. I mean, it's a toss up to me if you want to argue which one of them is better as far as in a vacuum. Tate has his strengths. and his weaknesses. KJ has his strengths and his weaknesses. But as it relates to the construct of the team, the reason I like KJ is because KJ is a linking player. He cuts, he passes, he defends. And if I have Jalen Green coming in year 2, I have Kevin Porter Jr. coming in year 4, I have Alperen Sengun year 2. We just drafted Jabari. I don't need a undersized 3 or 4 that's going to be posting up. I don't need an undersized 3 or 4 that's going to be playmaking because I have a lot of playmaking. I need a 3 or 4 that can hit threes, defend. And the reason I also like KJ is because he provides a little bit of vertical spacing for the team, which is a dynamic I don't think any other player on our roster currently provides. But that's my case for KJ.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I agree with much of what you said. I also was one of the people back then at the end last season that was wanting KJ to be the starter, mostly because there's a shooting difference there. You might argue that volume's different, but KJ is or looked to be for most of his career so far a better shooter than Jay Sean. And so on a team that was playing that's playing these guys as a forward and not as a center, they're not being involved in the pick and roll and they're not handling the ball. You expect them to space the floor, and KJ was the better one at doing that. And so, just from a strictly offensive standpoint, it always made sense. But Brad, what's your take on the forward rotation?
Yeah, so obviously, Jabari is going to be starting, so you have that one spot at the 3. I think it's going to be Eric Gordon, but if we're not talking about Eric Gordon, you got KJ, Tate, and Tari. I'll tell you right now, Tate will be the last person I would start at that position. I like Jayshawn Tate, even if I personally think he's the better of the entire group. I just don't think the spacing is adequate with him and Sengun on the floor. There was a really good chart put out there by NBA University on Twitter. It pretty much showed how open you are on the court, against other players in the NBA. Sengun and Tate were in the bottom 10. So the floor spacing was terrible. And, you got Jalen Green, KPJ, guys who need to get to the cup at will. The spacing's not going to be good if you got 2 guys who are just being left wide open. To put some perspective there, Russell Westbrook was the worst in the league at that, just to get an idea of what I'm talking about in that aspect. But, yeah, Jason Tate, I like him, but I don't like the spacing with him in the lineup. As for KJ, Frank said it best. That's a guy that fits well with the starting lineup. He's obviously not ball dominant. He's been shooting not too bad as of late. I want to say 35.7% last year, 36% in his first season. I like KJ. He's active on defense. Frank will preach to you. He's a better defender than people will give him credit for. Even than what I was giving him credit for. I went back and started looking at KJ. He could play some really good defense for the Rockets. But when it comes to him starting, I don't think it's going to happen. I want him to play backup 4 minutes. I've come to the conclusion that I want all 3 of these guys that we're talking about right now to be in the rotation. Usman Garuba would sadly be the odd man out in my case. I would put Tari at backup 5 to start because we just have so many wings and there's a logjam right now. So I'm looking at Jayshawn Tate and KJ being the backup 3 and 4. And then, Tari being that backup 5, he looked good in the summer league playing at the 5. He did it at LSU as well, in spot minutes. They play weird defense at LSU, but Tari, he was really good at doing it, and he looked good in the summer league doing it as well. So that's how I kind of feel about it. I like KJ. If he did start the 3, I would like it. Him and Sengun had the best chemistry on the team last year, if you're looking at 2 players. So I would like that, but I just don't see it happening.
So you'd have Gordon starting with the 4 that are locked in, and then you'd have Tate at the 3, KJ at the 4, and Tyrese with a backup 5 minutes off the bench, right?
Yeah. And then for, Eric Gordon, really quickly, I like him in the lineup. I know people like, oh, man, he's so undersized at the 3. I can't do it anymore. He's old. Get him off the team. I want to develop the young core. Well, hear me out. Eric Gordon does help the young core develop because he adds spacing to a team that lacks a lot of shooters. There's a case for even playing Garrison Matthews in the backup unit just to get some spacing out there. We were going through a space on Twitter with Paulo and them, and it's hard to get some shooters out there. So Eric Gordon being a 42.6% catch and shoot player alongside Kevin Porter Jr., best catch and shoot 3-point player in the NBA, Jalen Green, Jabari, supposed to be a sniper, and then Sengun. Sengun's going to prosper with all that shooting on the court. Jalen's going to prosper with all that space. KPJ going to prosper with all that space. I like Eric Gordon in the line.
Yeah, I would add that Eric Gordon, if he does start, if he really gets real minutes, I think the team is going to be better than people think because, like you pointed out, Brad, he addresses so many needs on the team. And even when I was just looking at the season, overview of the season, obviously all their best lineups feature Eric Gordon. He is, as you know, Paulo, as I showed you in that graph, he's a 3-and-D monster. Like, you can put him on any team. He's guarding. He's going to hit his threes, especially on catch and shoots. He spaces way out to the 30-foot range. And you imagine a team with Jabari Smith on the line, with Jalen Green, with Kevin Porter, and then you put Eric Gordon there, and talk about improving your defense. And to me, that the everything we've done really bodes well for some of our weaker players. And as we talk about some of the next topics, I'll talk about that a little bit. How guys like Eric Gordon and the addition of Tari and Jabari really helped the team as a whole.
So, Frank, Brad gave us his ideal, the starting being Eric Gordon, and then how he used all three of those off the bench, right? In an ideal world, who would be your starter, right? And then who'd be your who would be your 3 or 4 and your 5 off the bench?
Okay, so if I was like a real coach, I'm gonna put all my favorite player stuff aside. I would start Eric Gordon at the three. So my starting five would be Kevin Porter, Jalen, Eric Gordon, Shangun, and Jabari. And then the rotations at the five would be Jabari, Shangun, and Tari, and some machination of that. The rotation at the four would be uh, Tari, Jabari, Tate, and KJ. And in the way I have it, some of them are going to overlap different positions. And then rotation at the three would be with um, EG, KJ, pretty much almost the four with Garrison Matthews. In addition to that, then the guards, I think Ty probably gets squeezed out to go to the G League. I just see them, Knicks. As much as we hated him in the summer league, he actually, to me, he showed some things, and I'm sure, just like we give credit to all the other young players to say if they were in a real basketball setting with real players, they would look better. So I'm sure they are thinking some of that with Nick. So I can't just see them just giving Ty the range right now. And Garuba to me is the odd man out as well. Sad to say, I really, the him being hurt doesn't help him at all with the summer league thing. So I just, with the talent coming in, he was a later pick. Tari and Jabari coming in kind of push him down the rung a little bit. So I would say he gets squeezed out.
Yeah, and to me, I think what you said about the rotation is pretty much where I stand at. I think even though Garuba has 1+1 year in the NBA compared to Tari, it just seems like Tari seems less out of place when he's playing. Even back in summer league, right? We only saw summer league, but it seems to be a player that's more NBA ready somehow, even though he's got 1 more year of experience. And so I think Garuba might spend some time in the G League, which is really tough because if he doesn't play this year, or at least for most of this year, and then next year they have all of the cap space, which we'll get into in the last segment, then he's likely not never going to get a real chance. And that sucks, but it's the harsh reality about these prospects when you have so many of them. They're not all going to get a chance, and they're not all going to pan out. I'm not dooming Garuba to not panning out already, right? He can still contending teams that don't give players minutes sometimes develop guys as well, right? That it's not mutually exclusive. Sometimes guys take a little bit longer through the G League, but they eventually come around. But yeah, I think Guru was definitely the odd man out. But another thing that I wanted to touch on, so I think I agree as well. I think Gordon's going to start, right? But to me, that brings up a question: if your backup unit is Nix, who was a good shooter in summer league and in the G League, so he's I would probably call him a plus shooter. But even though he wasn't really in the NBA, I don't know how much of that was just him adapting. But he projects to be a plus shooter, right? And then you have Josh Christopher, who struggled last year, who struggled in the G League. So even if you go optimistically and you call him average, right, then you've got Tate, KJ, and Tari as the remaining three wings. You can squeeze Carson Matthews there, but he's probably not going to get uh, a amount of minutes big enough. It's also possible that they stagger them, and so maybe one of KPJ or Jalen are playing with the second unit, and those guys do provide more spacing. But it seems like that's going to be a problem. Do you guys see eventually, like, eventually Garrison Matthews climbing up the minute chart like he did last season, just because the team has to be functional. Because that second lineup just seems it's not a five in lineup, but it's pretty damn close to it. And I'll give my personal take first. I think it's fine. I wouldn't really ramp Garrison Matthews minutes too much, because even though they would probably play more functional basketball, I actually don't mind these guys that are not great shooters to get those reps shooting, even if they're missing, just because of the fact that, well, they all need to develop a shot if they're going to be successful in the NBA, right? We're not asking a pick and roll center to be shooting corner threes, even though that's not his game whatsoever. We're asking guys that project to be somewhat 3 and D wings that are not quite as much 3 as they are D right now. And so I think even though it will look ugly, personally, I would keep Garrison Matthews on the low for as long as I can, until it it just becomes too big of a problem eventually. If that happens, then sure. But how do you guys feel about Garrison Matthews and his role in this rotation, considering the spacing?
I'll go really
Yeah, you can go
quickly.
first, man.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'm pretty sure Silas came out and said, and I'll have to go back and double check, but I think Silas was pretty much getting at that he's going to be a lot better with giving out spot minutes this year. And I can see Garrison coming in for, even if it's less than 10 minutes a game, just coming in times where the lineup would just look nasty, from a spacing perspective, right? So
The
Garrison
five
is
in lineup.
playing. Yeah, I don't need no 5 in lineups, no 4 in lineups, not even a 3 in lineup. I need 4 shooters on the floor. But yeah, I'm cool with Garrison getting those spot minutes. Because it doesn't even have to be every game, but if they stretch it out to an 11-man rotation from time to time, I wouldn't blame him one bit. Garrison, he's a good shooter. And going back to that little openness chart that I was talking about, Garrison was one of the top 10 highly guarded players in the NBA on the 3-point line, just because of that's how much gravity he held on the Rockets. And not that he's a better shooter than anybody else, but like everyone knew, like, oh yeah, that's the guy on the Rockets. They just want him to come off screens and shoot. So he creates so much spacing. So getting him in for like 10 minutes a game, I wouldn't be opposed to it. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It might even be more, just because I believe that Coach Silas, with his offensive philosophy of 5 out, really loves shooting. I've been watching some videos that he had made for this thing called Coaching You, and he describes his just his overall framework for offense, and his biggest thing is just 5 out spacing. And I think it kind of makes sense now that I'm thinking about it. While Alperen didn't get as many minutes as we all were, championing for, and why he was playing Garrison Matthews almost damn near 30 minutes of stretches during the season, because I think he really values the spacing even over some things like defense, because his offense isn't functional when you have just that, like you said, three guys that can't shoot. So I can imagine a lineup where Garrison is paired with a non-shooter, like almost exclusively. Maybe Tari and Garrison, or Tate and Garrison always sub in together to kind of neutralize what they do. But I'm not mad at, my problem with him, honestly, is that, like, bro, you don't have to shoot as soon as you touch. Like, this dude jumps sideways and shoot threes. Like,
Yeah.
no regard for like human life, just throwing up whatever. Like, he's jumping from half court, and it's like, game on the line. He's just throwing it. Like, it just used to make me mad. If he could reel that back just a little bit, like, just play your role. Watch some film on JJ Redick. You don't have to take every shot. If it's not there, reset. You can screen till you get an open shot. A lot of the great shooters do that. I just think he had a little too much of a green light. It was like neon green. He needs to dial that back a little bit. Then I wouldn't mind, even though he's gets cooked on defense. I wouldn't mind because of the spacing.
Yeah,
Agree.
I definitely agree with you on the shots that he's taking. I think some of them were just, well, the offense can't get any better, so let me just jack up a shot. But then a lot of it was like, there's 15 seconds left on the shot clock, and you're taking a 30-foot contested three off a screen. So it could definitely get frustrating, and to me that's a little bit of the price to pay when you're trying to find shooters out of G League players, which is what Garrison Matthews was to begin last season. Uh, Props to him for earning an NBA contract, but it's not like you drafted a sharpshooter, and so it's going to come with some of those. The good's going to come with some of that bad. That being said, we're pretty much at the mark to end our first segment. So on our next segment, we'll talk about Sengun, who was touched on this segment, and how he'll be used within the Rockets offense now that he's a starter. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And we're back. And for our second segment, we're going to be talking a little bit about how we think Sengun will be used now that he's a starter, playing starter minutes. But to start us off, we've got Brad news, so we couldn't bring him on without him showing off a little bit of the stats. So he brought a graph for us. Brad, so what's your interpretation of this graph, and how do you think Sengun will be used at least to start the season?
So looking at this graph, right, you have every center going back to 2015 as a rookie compared against one another. So you have their playmaking talent on this y-axis and on the x-axis, how good of a post scorer they are, post per possession. So I'll go through this really quickly. I'm not trying to be too analytical, but if you're looking at very top right, you see, the best big man in the NBA, two-time MVP, Jokic as a rookie, and then Sengun. They're in a league of their own in this category. Extremely good playmakers and really good in the post as a rookie. You know what I'm saying? So now that Sengun is going to have a lot more minutes, and you can pull the chart away now, Paulo, if you want to. But now that Sengun is a starter, he's going to get way more minutes, a lot more opportunities. As you saw in that graph, he's a good post scorer. Going off of points per possession, he's a good playmaker as well. A really good playmaker in the post as well too. Really good decision maker. The offense is going to run through Jalen Green. That's just what's going to happen. He's the the number one piece to the Rockets puzzle. At the end of the day, everything has to run through him. But Sengun needs a lot more touches, a lot more emphasis needs to be on him. The Rockets need more ball movement, and it's going to start with I think getting Sengun the ball. At the top of the key, he's really good in that aspect. And as we talked about, hopefully he gets some minutes with KJ, even if KJ doesn't start, just because they have their chemistry is that good together. Sengun works really well with cutting players. If Tate does start, that would be good. Because Tate's not a bad cutter, but KJ's a way better cutter. I'd like to see that. And if he's not the top of the key, just run him in the post. And you have 4 shooters in the starting lineup. They're not going to be able to double team him towards the end of last year. We saw teams starting to send doubles towards Sengun. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to be able to double if you got 4 shooters out there. Hopefully Jabari shoots way better than he did in the summer league, which I'm expecting. You can't put too much stock into summer league. Jabari is a good shooter, so I'm under the assumption you're not going to be able to just double team Sengun like that. And if you do, there's going to be a good shooter out there that can knock down a 3-ball. So that's how I'm hoping they use Sengun. A lot more actions at the top of the key, a lot more post-ups. You know what I'm saying? He's too good, to not get a lot of touches. And now that he's starting, they traded Wood for a reason. Just get that
sure.
ball. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to, we saw when he was Sengun was basically the little point guard or the main engine of the second unit for stints last season. And something we saw a lot was those plays with a good movement shooter or a good 3-point shooter in general, because we didn't really have many of those. We saw how good Sengun was when paired up with DJ Augustine, for example. We saw how good he was when we were running Armani Brooks and Gerson Matthews in the same lineup, and they would just run those little actions at the top, in the wings. I would be really interested to see how that works with a guy like Ty Washington, who's a guy who's really good at reading how the defense is reacting to what's happening live. And combined with that, he's someone who's got a really quick trigger finger in his jump shot. And so I know Ty probably won't play to start the season as much as I would like him to. I think Knicks might be able to do this as well. We saw little flashes of it in summer league where he would run the action and then he would walk up into a pull-up 3, right? So if you can do that, I think that skill set's it's really useful when you're playing with Sengun. The other thing I would touch on is I think Sengun will be staggered with KPJ as much as possible. I think they will try to have between Jalen, KPJ, and Sengun, they'll try to have one on the floor pretty much at all times. And so his chemistry with his guards and their ability to be able to pull up and navigate the pick and roll is going to be really important. And then besides that, let's just watch him Sengun ball. Give the ball to him in the post and let him cook. And if he gets double team, let him kick out to open shooters. Like we saw, this was something that I wanted to see a lot last season, and I feel like we didn't see enough. Or when we saw it, it was really on and off. So we would see it for a stretch, and then he'd go like 2 or 3 games without designated touches specifically for him. And it's also something that Salah said. that now that he's had an entire off season, that he's going to rework his offense a little bit, and I hope that a big part of it, at least when KPJ or when Jalen are not on the floor with him, that we give him the ball and we let him be the true engine. But Frank, what about you? How do you feel Sengun will be used?
Yeah, I think you guys hit a lot of the great points, especially Brad pointing out the points per possession that Shangun generated in the post, which I think is very key in drawing those double teams. And if the fact that he's not a spacer right now, him being so skilled in the post is what's going to allow him to be on the floor, because the point of any system of basketball is to be able to generate help from more than one defender. So if you're, whether it's driving to get 2 feet in the paint or being an elite shooter, if you can skew the defense enough where they need to come and help, then you've done your job. And for him, I think in that post, being able to pass out of there, so that means the players around him have to be guys that like cutting and moving. And I think that's why him and KJ, and you pointed out with a lot of the players that he played really well with, they moved around a lot. I'm curious to see how he looks with Jabari. I think Jabari is a very active off-ball player. He's always setting screens, moving, trying to coordinate the offense. So I think that's going to be a nice matchup. And him and Jalen actually had some great chemistry towards the end of the season. I think Jalen was shooting almost like 59% on passes assisted to him by Shangun. And if you just watch the game, Shangun's a great. He's just a big, strong kid. So when he sets a screen, he sets a screen compared to like Wood, which is like, hiding behind a bush. But compared to like an oak tree or something. But yeah, so I think for him, and another thing within the offense, when they do go 5 out with a guy that can't shoot, it's not like it's if you can. That's why it's important. Like we were talking about earlier with the spacing. If you have one player that can't shoot on a 5 out offense, that's fine, because what it does is when you pass the ball out to him in Silas's offense, what they want the players to do is to use him as a screener. Because if for example, if he's flanked on one side by Jalen, KPJ's on the other side, you have Eric Gordon in the corner and Jabari in the corner. If they run an action where one of those guys penetrates the defense, wherever that help comes, there's going to be a disadvantage somewhere. And if one of those players just runs a screen handoff with Shangun, then the defense is going to be messed up, because they're going to be trying to rotate. So it's just important that they move, and then with his passing ability is the icing on the cake. If he couldn't pass with his non-shooting right now, I don't think he should be starting. But the fact that he's has such great vision, that he's a good screener, he can see the court. It really kind of mitigates some of the spacing issues that he might have. So yeah, I think he'll. His thing is that he just has to show us that he can play defense as an NBA center on a high level consistently. Because I think if he can't show that, Jabari getting a lot of burn at 5 to me was a blessing and a curse for a lot of players on the roster, because he looked great. And so I can see Silas probably in the back of his mind, like, maybe we need to pivot to that. So then, that's just my take on that.
Yeah, I think a really important part of what you talked about the generating advantages is having guys that will make the correct decision with that advantage, because you need once you generate the advantage, you need to keep the defense on its toes so that they can't just rotate back into position. So you need to be quick, you need to be smart with your decisions. And I wonder how that will go on a team that's this young. And I think that's a little bit of why South offense looks so lost at times. It's because, well, these are really young players, and sometimes you're generating the advantages, but they're not seeing them in time, and so or they see them in time, but eventually in that chain, one of the links doesn't make the correct decision, and so that advantage is lost, and then you end up trying to reset the offense, and you end up settling for a KPJ step back 3. And this doesn't excuse all of KPJ step back 3s, because he does take some where it doesn't really make much sense. But I think that's a really good point that you hit. That being said, still on the topic of Sengun, right? You talked about the defense. I see a lot of people that say offensively that they want him to develop a 3-point shot, and I think, I don't know, at least to me, while that would be cool and it would allow you to run pick and pop, and it would allow you to run him off the ball completely, even so. Sengun at this point, you probably want to use him either with the ball in his hands or screening for someone who has the ball in his hands. Usually not as a pure floor spacer, right? Him getting a 3-point shot would bring that facet of his game, and that would give you more options. But I don't think that's the most important thing for him offensively. I think I would, and this is really anti-analytics, and I'm usually an analytics guy.
I already
I
know
think
what you're gonna say, but go ahead.
you think so?
Yeah,
We'll
because
see.
I said the same thing the other day. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I think I would much rather him instead of being able to space the floor. I'd rather him even start at the mid range. I'd rather him be able to punish. So right now he can back down defenders, and he has a spin move to get past people, and he has his little hook shot, right? And when you go and look at great post players, even Joel Embiid or Hakeem Olajuwon, right? At least for me in specific, because you guys know I'm young, so I've seen Embiid, but I've also seen Hakeem because he's a rocket, right? They part of part of their combo is they are such a threat to just turn around and shoot a jump shot over you that you have to account for that, and that opens up space for them to use the spin moves and to get by people and get to the rim. And so to me, I think as a center, Sengun will most of the time be used either screening or with the ball in his hands. And so I would rather him optimize that part of his game and be truly elite at it rather than try to make try to fit him into this mold of a player that can also play off the ball really well. Because well, at that point, if you want a guy like that, you probably shouldn't be going for a guy like Sengun. And although that might be something that later down the line in his career, he's playing with more stars, something that will be important. I think right now, at least for him to succeed in the NBA, I think that little turnaround game, the jump shot out of the post, is something that to me is more important. I don't know. I guess since I talked about the Spartan specific, if y'all have any other or want to comment on this, things that you'd like Shengun to develop or what the priority should be on the offensive end, go ahead and take it away.
I'll be quick on this matter. Starting with the three ball, it would really help one just because the Rockets don't have a lot of shooters on this current team, so it's just it just helps the spacing for everybody else on the court. But as for him and his game in particular, it does open up a lot if he gets even a mid range jumper. As you put it on the money, you can look at a lot of great post scorers in the NBA. They pretty much all have a mid range shot. Actually, I can't think of one that doesn't have a mid range jumper. And so if Sengun gets that, it's only going to elevate his game that much more. Then he can expand that to the 3 point line. Then nice, he shot I want to say 80% in Turkey when he won MVP from the free throw line. So I think he'll be able to develop those things. What do you think, though, Frank?
Yeah. I mean, bro, like I literally was. I don't know where I even said it, but that is exactly to me. Honestly, it doesn't make any sense for me for a player to develop a three ball without first being almost at least average to above average in the mid range, because then for him as a big, he's not going to be operating a lot of times as far as with his offensive package at the in the three. When he's at the top of the key, he's going to be there as a facilitator most of the time. So when he's in his bag in the post, he needs that. And you can even think of short rolling, pick and pops within the paint. Him and Jabari, if they can run some actions together where he can just pop up and just shoot a little short jumper, um, that's really all he needs. If he can add that to his game, man, that's just going to blow open the offense, because then it puts you in a bind at really wherever they want to go. Just another thing, as far as with his development, I think it takes time for a lot of these bigs to get the shooting touch. I think he has, like you said, with the free throw percentage, just scale out that he's going to be a good shooter. For him this year, I really just want to see whether he can maintain his own as an NBA starting center. I think people are putting a lot of pressure on him. I think he's still 19. So let's give him some time, but he just needs to show that he belongs in the NBA as far as being able to stay on the floor. Because, like I said, the footsteps for a lot of guys are right there, and I can see them really, if depending on how the draft goes, maybe pivoting away from him if he's not able to do that.
Yeah, two quick things, Paulo.
Yeah.
Sengun actually does turn 20 on July 25th. So that's how young this kid is. He's just now turning 20. And then another thing, when it comes to pressure, the thing I liked about him a lot when I scouted him, again, winning MVP at 18 years old is so crazy to me. Like, guys like Luka won MVP at Real Madrid. So when it comes to pressure, I feel like he's one of those guys that can, withstand that. He already won MVP in the league of grown men. So I don't think the NBA really phases him much. So I'm excited for him to start, man. And I know everyone is, but I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, it's one of those players that just has a really high ceiling. I think I think a fun exercise that we could do since we've got a couple minutes to burn. So I just went on Basketball Reference because I wanted to see his free throw stats because he's the guy that gets to the free throw line a lot, and he was a good free throw shooter in Turkey. And I want to see. I know he struggled for a little bit to begin the season. He got up to 71% for the season, right? And so I went and checked, and Baseball Reference has this little projection tab that tries to predict what the players will average um, for the upcoming season, considering like their age and what they did the previous season and the role that they will have. And so I think a little fun thing to close out segment would be go at least through the major stats, and I'll give you what the projection is, and I'll ask you guys if you guys would take the over or the under on that. I think that'll be fun.
Okay. So
Right.
for Sengun, right?
Yeah. So I'll go through it. 4 points. They have a confident 17.2. How do you guys feel about that?
This
Over
is
under?
per 36 though, right?
Wait, it is?
Because I was on
It
Basketball
is.
Reference the other day.
Hmm.
It's per 36.
Wait, is this per 36 stats from last season? No, it isn't. It's different. So they have them be a little bit better. I mean,
Let me
sure.
see.
Let's look at the per 36, and I mean, it should work. So for 17 points, are you taking? I think this one's pretty easy. Are you taking the over or the under, Brad?
I was thinking, man, I gotta I gotta scale it back. Thinking back to 30. Use that engineering degree I have. I'll take the I'll take the over. I'll take the over.
You're gonna take the over on 17
I mean,
points?
it's a
Yeah,
per 36. It's a per 36.
Man,
Scale it back. Scale it back. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you're
uh,
right.
that's high,
Nah.
bro. I'm gonna go under. I think he's gonna be probably like if on a good seat, if he hits 15, I'll be surprised.
Okay.
Honestly, just
For
because they have so
36?
many options.
You
Yeah,
think so?
even yeah. I just think they got
Okay.
okay. When he played the starting minutes towards the end of the season, he didn't score that much with KPJ and Jalen. When they were
That's
going
true.
nuts, I think he scored averaged like 13 or 14 points per game.
Okay. Yeah.
So eh,
For a quick comparison, he had 16.7 per 36 last year. So
I mean,
yeah.
but he also played less minutes. It's when you play less minutes, the per 36
Exactly.
numbers
right,
get
it
It'll look
rates
better.
it
better.
up. So
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll take the under on that as well, just because with Jabari Smith on the team as well, you have Ferry Gordon starting. I think he'll get touches. I think he probably won't get that many touches. Next one we'll go through total rebounds. They have 9.5. I'll start on this one. I'll take the over on that.
same.
All right. Looking at his last year's per 36, I'll take the over as well. I'll take the over as
I'll
well.
take the over as well.
Yeah,
He
he
just
was on par with Mobley in rebounding last year with all his like advanced stats. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he seems like a good rebounder. He seems to take that personally, and our team isn't really, even especially with Eric Gordon there's not a lot of good rebounders there. So I think a lot of them will fall to Sengun. Okay, we'll go through assists is the next one, and they have 4.5.
over.
Over. Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a passer. And he's starting now? Yeah.
Bro, that man's about to
Man.
have 5. He's gonna average at least 5.
Talk about a per 36. He might outright average 4.5.
No, I'm just talking about not even per 30. Just he's gonna average like 5 assists.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
Yeah.
my thought. Like, yeah,
I think
What was he at
4.5.
last year? Like 2.5? Yeah.
Yeah, two
He'll
two
push
and a
it up to
half last
4.
year. I'll
Yeah.
go. I think that's really on the money for me. So that's the perfect over under for me at 4.5. So I guess to be different, I'll go for the under just because of usage, and if he is running the second unit as well, if they stagger them a little bit, then I think it's pretty comfortable with the over. But without knowing that, just trying to guess right now, I'll go for the under. And then, I mean, blocks and steals are really a crapshoot when it comes to NBA players. So I'll do the splits instead. They've got field goal percentage at 49%. I'll take the over on that.
just
Ooh,
raw field goal. Yeah,
Yeah, raw field
49%.
over
goal.
for a center. Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be difficult. I want to say he was around that same percentage last year. I'll personally, it depends on the season. I think he could start low because he's going to be going against NBA centers, and towards the end, he could kick it up because I have that expectation in him.
I
So
think
I'll say over, but I could see a slow start just because he's going against NBA centers or
so.
starting centers. I don't know why I said NBA centers. Starting
For,
centers now.
for me, I think when he was at that backup role, right, he was having a lot of higher of his percentage of his shots being threes. I think that's what tanked the percentage a little bit. Although he did shoot only 54% from 2 point field goal, which I don't think is great for centers. But I do think he'll play more inside on more extended minutes and 1-3. Like if he would go a full game shooting 4 shots and 2 of those were just spot up threes because he wasn't being used, right? That's going to tank your field goal percentage a lot. So I'll go for the over because of that. We'll go through 3 point percentage,
Three
which
point
is
percentage.
28% on the thing.
Over. Over. Come on now.
Uh,
What are you feeling?
I
Under?
don't know, bro. He was at 25 last year, right?
Yeah, I think
Right,
Uh,
it
so.
was like
yeah,
25 or something like that.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, I think it'll be right there, just like with the other one you were talking about, Paulo. I'm gonna say, I'll say under, man. I'm gonna say under. I just don't see that jump. If it is, it'll be like 27 or something.
You think he can develop a good three baller like in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at a lot of like Mark Powell, all these
Yeah,
European centers.
they all got it.
They some of them never even shot threes ever, and when they did, they missed them. Then over like 5 6 years into their career, a lot of them get up to 40s. So it's
Yeah,
a skill thing, and those guys are skilled. I think they can learn it.
yeah,
what about you,
definitely agree.
Brad? You taking the over?
Yeah, I'll take the over. But when it comes to assists, man, look, I'm not a betting man, but I'll bet good money that he'll get over 4.5 assists. But yeah, I'm
Yeah,
over on that 3 point
that's fair
percentage.
enough. 28%. I'll take the over as well. I don't think it will be by much. I think 29, maybe 30%, but I'll take the over. And then we've got two left. We got free throw percentage, which is at a 73, and I'll take. It's on the verge for me, but I'll take the over as well by a little bit.
That's kind of
Same, yeah, same for me. I'll take the over.
so he was 71% last year. I thought it was lower. I'll take the over. He got to the line a lot last year. He's gonna get to the line a lot more this year. He's gonna be more comfortable there, in my opinion. Year two, over.
That's fair enough. And then our last over and under will be field goal attempts. They have it projected at 12.7, so we'll call it 13. 13 over or under.
How many was he at last year? Just
7.3.
That's
that's
per
almost
game or
double.
over under. That's per game or per 36 last year.
No, per 36 last year it was 12.7. So it was basically the exact same.
Oh,
I'm gonna go under for his field
I
goal. I don't
respect.
think he gets. Yeah,
13
I
shots a game.
just yeah.
You know what's crazy? Him being in the starting unit might take. Well, it depends how many minutes he gets with his own unit, because that's why he was getting a lot of his shots. You know, being with the starters is
Facts.
probably gonna be
Yeah,
more of a facilitator. So that's a good point. It'll depend on the rotations, but
yeah, and
I'll say
I
over.
think he likes being a facilitator,
Yeah,
and he's like LeBron in a sense, like not in how they play, but like people get on LeBron for always passing the ball. Like he's gonna make the play. So if
yeah,
he's not like trying, yeah. So if those guys are moving, then I can see him getting those assists, and he's not gonna be caring about getting up his shots. He's just gonna pass the ball if you're there.
you're right.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a
That's
good
what I'm
point.
at too. I'm going for the under as well because I think if I was indecisive about the 4.5 assists, if he's getting that many assists, he probably isn't getting that many shots up, especially with how many guys were playing that are shot creators. So I'll go for the under as well. Brad, what you go for?
Uh, I went for the. I said the over, but I'll go under. The logic is screaming under, so I'll
Okay,
say under.
that's fair enough. Okay, so that will be us done for our second segment. For our third segment, it's the drama alert segment. We're going to be talking about the cap space we have next off season, and with James Harden signing a 1+1 this year, if you would be comfortable or if you'd like him to come back, if that was a possibility for next year. That being said, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. And we're back. And for our final segment, we're going to be talking a little bit about the recent news that James Harden signed a 1+1 deal. He took a little bit of a pay cut with the Sixers, so they could bring on PJ Tucker and Daniel House from free agency, right? And what that might imply is, well, he's going to be what it does imply is he'll be a free agent again next offseason. And one of the biggest question marks with the Rockets roster right now is the point guard position. And that's pretty much what James Harden's been playing at the later stages of his career. Guy that's averaging, I think, 10 plus assists for 2 years now. Um, so that brings up an interesting question. There's clear history between the Rockets and James Harden. When he left, his IG post kind of alluded a little bit to a potential comeback in the future. The Rockets are a team that are both going to be trying to win after next offseason, right? Since they don't own their pick anymore, and James Harden's a free agent, and they have an immense amount of cap space, close to $70 million, right? So this begs the question: it's the writing's on the wall. If James Harden wins a championship in Philadelphia, which is what he left for, right? How would you guys feel about bringing him back? And if we did bring him back, what role would you want him to play? Would you trust KPJ to be the starting point guard? Would you want James Harden to be a six man? Would you want James Harden to start and you move KPJ to the six man? Then what happens with that? There's a lot of wrinkles to it. What happens to Ty Ty, Deshaun Nix, so guys like that, right? Frank, we'll go to you first. How would you feel about the James Harden return?
I mean, I've thought about this. I think over time I've gotten, I've been able to come around to it, and but with a but. Like, so if he's coming back, obviously he has to come back in a more humbled version, because if he's coming back to be the kind of the center of the universe for the Rockets, I don't want that. I would rather see him as Chris Paul's second act after he left Houston, where he's more of a mentor, but a mentor that's still good. Like, you're the best player on the team, but you know that you're trying to get these guys to a certain level they need to get to, rather than just playing to get what you need to get. As far as what it looks like on the court, I don't think, to me, that excludes KPJ. I don't like the juxtaposition of people putting KPJ's either a point guard or the bench. Like, he's a wing. At the end of the day, this man, Kevin Porter, is a wing that's transitioning into the point guard role. But to me, his default is wing. And I like his talents enough as a three-point shooter and his potential on defense, that if I did insert an all-world point guard, that I would just move him to the three. Eric Gordon can go, and whoever else is there can go. I would just move KPJ to the three and have a three-guard lineup with Jalen, Kevin Porter, and Harden, and stagger them where there's always two of them on the court at all times, whether it's KPJ and Harden, Jalen and KPJ, Jalen and Harden, and then you have elite athleticism and elite playmaking throughout the whole game, which is kind of similar what we try to do with the Chris Paul era, where I think, like Max Kellerman coined and said, you have Hall of Fame point guard play for 48 minutes. So, in a vacuum and in an ideal world, it makes sense. But we know with James, I don't know how I'd feel if I seen him taking plays off on defense, not trying, and all the stuff that we know he does, standing at half court when he doesn't have the ball. I can't imagine him starting to become a screener and be doing all this motion and stuff like that. So I think in like a dream world, it would be kind of cool for him to come back. But in reality, I just don't see how it works basketball fit wise. But I'm sure the Rockets would want it in a sense. Now, I don't know how Tillman would feel about giving him, because he wants a big contract after this one. So are we the team that's going to give him a 5-year supermax and then be dealing with Harden at 39, whatever that looks like, after, Turkey Leg Hut and his homegirl's business party? So, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm a little
I mean,
torn on that.
I think you brought up a bunch of really good points. I agree with most of what you said. I think if he came back, he'd need to be a Chris Paul type. I think what I envision when I look at the attractive side of that idea is Jalen Green, who's this insane off-ball player, all of a sudden paired up with a guy like James Harden, who has elite vision. It's going to find him every single time, right? I I hope that the last 2 years for James Harden have kind of taught him that he's not going to be able to be the guy that he was, but he can still be an elite player. And it remains to be seen, right? We're talking about this now, but we don't know how he'll come back next season. He says that he's finally 100% and that he wasn't 100% the last 2 seasons ever since the hamstring injury. But I would love more athletic James Harden or 100% James Harden playing the same style that James Harden was playing in Brooklyn and in Philly to end the season, right? There are some tweaks that I think he'll still have to make. He'll have to be more ready for catch and shoot jump shots. I think he'll have to be. I think he'll have to be an example for this team, and I think that's tough for a guy like James. I think he comes in and he's immediately a superstar. We know, just KPJ looks up to him a bunch, right? And his habits. I think then the negative side is his habits, while they worked for him, which is a generational talent, right? They might not work for for guys that we have on the roster right now. And while James Harden could afford to live the life that he did live while he was here in Houston, a lot of these guys probably can't. And so while there's a lot of positives, there's also a lot of risks that we're taking by signing him. Another thing is his contract, right? What are you trying to sign him for? He is, I think, 33 years old at the moment. Let me just double check. He is, yeah, 32, turns 33 in August 26th, so before the season. At 33 years old, if he wants to come back on I'll even give him max money, whatever, call it 40 million or whatever, as long as it's a deal that the Rockets can get out of sooner rather than later. So the most I'll do, he can come earn his $40 million for 2 years. You can add a plus one in there. I think it'll probably have to be a team option for me to accept. But the most important thing for me is I don't want the situation kind of what Luka has in Dallas or had in Dallas, where they paid Porzingis and now the team couldn't do any moves to build around Luka because they had this huge cap space black hole that nobody wanted to trade for, and that was on a contract that I think in the first after the first year of that contract, it already looked terrible because he got hurt, and then you were talking about it's Porzingis making max money for 4 years, and nobody wants that, and they had to wait a couple of years, and then eventually I think they fleeced the Wizards, but they traded him back for. They traded him to the Wizards for a couple of other bad contracts that were a little bit smaller, and those guys ended up overperforming what they had done up to that point in their careers, right? And so it kind of worked out for them now, but for a couple of years there, they were stuck. And so, from a cap perspective, they need to be really careful with what they do. I am not even close to giving him a full 5 year max, or I don't think we could, but even a 4 year max, not even close to that. I'll give him a couple of years. I think, depending on how he looks this season, I can't see a lot of teams giving him that much money, especially because he just had two injury riddled years and because of his age. He's 33 right now. He'll be 34 by the time we're giving him that contract. Nobody's going to give him a contract until he's 38, for example. And so, from that perspective, yes. And then the on the court side of it, right? I like what you said about the three guard lineup. I hadn't really thought about that. The way I had envisioned it was more of a you slide KPJ back to the six man, or if KPJ has a huge lead, then maybe you let them play all three together and you figure it out later. But I was envisioning. I don't think KPJ will be at that level quite yet. At least not at Harden level, even at this stage in his career. And so it would be one of those dynamics where Harden is decaying, or decaying is kind of a bad word, as at the same time as KPJ is on the rise, and then eventually KPJ surpasses him, and you flip them around and you start KPJ, right? Um, one of that type of dynamic, considering how much young talent the Rockets have. I think depending on who we draft, if we draft a point guard, then I'm probably good on this. I'll probably just not touch it because the reward no longer compensates for all the risks that I mentioned. Uh, but I'm not as close to it as a lot of the fan base is. When I mentioned it on Twitter, people were really mad about it, and I think not only am I not as close to the idea as a lot of the base is, I think the idea is a lot more realistic than what fans give it credit for. There's a lot of stuff there. There's Harden's ties to Houston. There would be the Harden already getting what he wanted in a championship, while at the same time there not being real insane potential for him to repeat because if they win this year, they're not the favorites, and so it would be a bit of an underdog situation, and so it wouldn't be like the Nets, where if they won once, they would still be the favorites the year afterwards, right? So I think it's a little bit more realistic than people give it credit for. although I would be really careful in the way that I would do it. What about you, Brad?
Yeah, so I talked about this in the space today, so it's fresh on my mind. So I'll try to be quick and concise. But first things first. Well, Harden, I don't see him coming to Houston if he doesn't want to ring in Philly. Even if he did want to ring in Philly, I would still be ring chasing if I were him. So in any scenario where they lose and he wants to come to Houston, I don't see that happening. But if that were to happen, okay, let's talk about the Rockets. If he wants to come there, KPJ is a big piece of the equation. I personally would like him to come to the three. KPJ, if Harden were to come in, I would still want to start Kevin Porter Jr. But James Harden role, that would be the primary thing. As Frank mentioned, you don't want him being that guy that's just going to be, the number one guy, dribble, 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 standing at the top of the key, you know what I'm saying? Half-assing out there, excuse my language for your podcast. But,
You're good.
James Harden, I expect him to kind of play how he's playing in Philly, not like just because he has a hurt hamstring, but, a better version of that. Tyrese Maxey is looking really good over there with James Harden by his side. I think he really elevates Jalen Green's play. And, this is a discussion, I'll end on this, that we had in the this Twitter space today. I think, and they were saying, James Harden is the best player on the team. If he comes next year, he's not going to play second fiddle to Jalen Green. And I said, well, player doesn't matter. Whoever's the better scorer, James Harden has the higher, high enough IQ to recognize, okay, yeah, this is the guy who needs to be getting the touches. I'm going to be kicking the rock to him. By, this upcoming year, Jalen Green, I think, is going to average, anywhere from 22 to 25 points per game. Maybe more. He might shock me. But going into that next year, if that's my expectation, I expect him to be an even better offensive player. And then you got James Harden declining another year. He'll be 34, as Paulo mentioned, by the start of that season. I think Jalen Green will be a better scorer at that point in his career. It may sound crazy. Maybe it's a hot take. Y'all tell me if that's a crazy take. But I just thought about it today. I think Jalen Green will be a better scorer at that time than Harden is at 34. And then in that case, James Harden would look really good elevating Jalen Green at that stage of his career. And then from there, that'll be the first year the Rockets get to the playoffs and see what happens from there. When it comes to that Supermax, really quick, I would do a 1-and-1 deal. The Rockets have $70 million in cap space. I'm pretty sure you can pay him as much as you want. It wouldn't affect the cap space, to be honest.
Yeah. So I think one part of it that that we haven't mentioned yet is if Harden comes. Well, first of all, in my opinion, he's coming to elevate us from a rebuilding team to a play-in bottom of the playoffs team, right? You're not expecting to instantly become a contender. It's not that type of free agent acquisition. Even though that happened with the Suns, that's not something that happens barely ever. And being conservative, you probably want Harden to help you take that next step. And once you get Jalen Green and all of these young guys some playoff reps, maybe they're mature enough to get there by themselves, and you'd have Harden. If you sign him to a short deal, you'd have Harden coming off the books, and you'd have more flexibility there. The other thing we haven't touched on that I kind of want to steer the conversation towards is, well, what happens to Alperen Sengun? Because if you bring in Harden, then the only off-ball player or the only role player type that we would have would be Jabari, right? The only guy that's going to be playing defense at a really high level and shooting threes. Is that too much? Would you still trust Sengun to be the starting center? You'd have to improve a lot on defense, in my opinion. If you're having that much creation, you should probably go after a more defensive-minded center with the rest of your cap space or via trade or whatever. How would you feel about Alperen Sengun in a world where James Harden does sign in Houston, Frank?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And when I was thinking about this, that is something that came up in my mind. Like, it depends on how he looks on defense, because we can't, if we are trying to elevate, then we can't afford to have two negative players on defense. And I don't think he's going to be a negative, but if he is, then he might have to go to the bench. Then they were probably, if you're bringing James, then you're going to construct a real team. So that means we're going to have a traditional big that can protect the paint. That means you might bring in some other vets to kind of fill out the roster a little bit. So I think it'll look totally different. And to your point, I think if James is healthy and comes to the Rockets, we are going to be a playoff team, because I truly believe we have enough talent, young talent, that you insert a superstar to them, especially going into the 2021 class's third year, Jabari's and Tari's and Ty Ty's second year. KPJ is going to be a 50-year player. And you would assume
Wow.
that, I mean, at that time, these dudes are ready to kind of pop off. And I think if James Harden joins the Rockets in 2023, we're a playoff team. I just can't see a team with him, his resume as far as carrying franchises and doing stuff like that, being a play-in team. I think we'd instantly be in the top 9 or 8 just by him existing on the
I agree.
roster.
Yep, I think that's a really good point. I don't know, Brad, do you want to touch on anything else Harden related? I was going to kind of to close out on a different note. I was going to scroll through the free agent list for 2023 because you're talking about Harden, right? He would be a big chunk of that cap space, and so part of the equation has to be, well, if you don't get Harden, you have the cap space to invest into some other guys. And I was going to go through some of those other guys and like just list some of them off and see what your thoughts are on them.
Closing out, I do think, as you mentioned, getting a defensive center would be good. So perfect segue into your list of free agents. While you pull that up, a guy I've been looking at for a long time who might be unrealistic now that we have Tata Washington, Patrick Beverly. I thought he would be a good acquisition for the team before the draft. A dog on defense, 3-and-D, get some energy into these guys. You know what I'm saying? The Rockets, again, bad defensive team. I thought Pat Bev would be a good acquisition off the bench. Ty's here. I do think Ty can slide to the 2. I don't want him to, but Patrick Beverly's not a true point guard. It's positionless basketball at the end of the day. I think Ty and PBF can mess around and play together. Ty's a 6'9" wingspan, 6'3", height. It could happen, but I'm less, keen to the idea with Ty being there.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I guess I'll go through some names. So, I'll ask first. What's the first kind of hole that you're looking to plug going into next season? I know a lot of it will depend on how a lot of these guys will look, but position-wise or archetype-wise, so I can kind of filter it on that mold and have a more meaningful list, I guess. What
Go
would you
ahead,
be
Frank.
looking
I know
for?
mine. What
Yeah, I
you
would
say?
say point guard. It's point guard easy because drafting Jabari and how dependent he's going to be on the playmaking from other people, and even Tari to an extent, even though Tari can generate his own offense in transition, we need it because just learning more about the offensive system that Coach Salas wants to run, he needs guys that are able to set the table and set those offensive plays up so that everybody can get theirs. The more talent we add on the team, the onus on the guards to be able to maximize all that talent is really going to really be important. And I think as far as him having to not open up his entire playbook is because our team is young and they wouldn't be able to make all those reads and be able to do that over and over an entire game. And I always use this analogy, and I'm going to keep using it. A point guard is like a quarterback in football. The quarterback is the guy that feeds the receiver. The quarterback is the one that can audible so a running back doesn't get the ball. So when you're the guy that determines how other guys eat, you got to be on point. And I think for the team, with all these talented guys, it was cool when we were kind of experimenting in 2020 and seeing the growth out of Kevin Porter in 2021. And I hope he continues to grow. But now you're getting real talent in the team that they can get disgruntled if they're not getting the ball in their spots. And, that's something I think a backup point guard would be able to address for the team.
Okay, so point guards for Frank. What about you, Brad?
Just looking at the roster now, we have Tari. I agree with Frank. Point guard is extremely important. Personally, I'm looking right now. I said I wanted to plug Tari Eason at the backup 5. I don't want him playing backup 5. I want him starting at the 3 in the long haul. So they could get some depth at the center position. That would be much appreciated. I think the Rockets still need a lob threat. They don't technically have a playmaker to really facilitate to a lob threat like that. But having those kind of guys who are defensive bigs, lob threats are good to have. So personally, that'd be nice to have as a backup center.
Okay, so going for backup point guards first. I'm just gonna fire off some names and you say yes or no. Just quick as it is. Are you interested or are you not? I'm going to go first. Just to be controversial, Kyrie Irving.
I don't know. I don't know, bro. That caught me off guard. Probably not. I don't know. Nah,
That's a no for me.
I don't want that.
For
Yeah,
me,
nah. Yeah, afraid no.
Okay. D'Angelo Russell.
Yes.
Whew.
I would.
Yeah, all right, fine. Let's have fun. Let's say
Depends
yes.
on how much money he wants, but probably yes. This is something I'd be interested in. Because there's a bunch of shooting guards in here. There's Patrick Beverly, who Brad mentioned. For me, it's a yes.
That's a yes for me.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Okay, next one is Riley Jackson.
Yeah. I mean, I ain't mad at Reggie. I mean, you got to know how down bad we are right now, bro. So I
Yeah.
mean, everybody
true.
you say sounds like Jerry West. Like you're just naming like the, you know what I mean? Like it sounds like you're saying Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan, Michael. Yeah. So yes, we need
Um,
to.
I feel that. I changed my answer to yes in respect to that.
there's Kobe White. So this is not a lot of guys.
Kobe
Kobe
White.
White.
Yeah, I like Kobe.
Yeah, he's not bad. I had him in a fantasy basketball last year. Pretty
The
good.
reaction is
I'll say
always
that.
the same. I love it. It's all okay. Maybe there's
Hey,
nothing
y'all know
better.
how bad we were that when Schroeder came in and people were like happy that he was running pick and rolls and
Yes.
actually like throwing the ball to the guy that was supposed to get to. So yeah,
And
any
then
of these guys.
for
Yeah.
context, the dude was averaging 11, 4, and 6, 3 and 6 on 39, 33 splits. Like what? It was
It
awful,
looked
man.
like Chris Paul, like to us in our eyes. It looked like prime CP3. Like I was like, damn, he made a cross court pass.
Yeah, I remember he threw that one lob pass half court, and Twitter was like, "Oh yeah, that's a
Going
real point
crazy,
guard right
right?
there." I'm like, "All right, y'all need to get off the app,
Yeah,
man."
yeah, we was gassing. We was gassing.
Yeah.
What about Kendrick Nunn, who we haven't seen for a year now? I like him.
Nah, that's a no for me.
Man, I heard
All right.
Kendrick. I thought you were about to say Perkins. I forgot about Kendrick Nunn. But yeah, that's a no for me. That's a no.
I mean, this is decaying really quickly. I will say that. There really isn't. There's Austin Rivers, I guess.
Nah, yeah, I wouldn't mind
I'll take him
Austin.
back. Yeah, get him back. Get him back.
Play defense. Do his little right, go to the right crossover. He got that one crossover. Y'all remember that?
Yeah, he got that one.
And
The
it
same
will
one
work.
every time.
The
It
same
worked
movie used
every
in high
damn
school.
time. Yep.
Yeah, and then after that, it's just a bunch of undrafted rookies on minimum deals. So that's it for point guards. So if we're looking after a point guard, we better land Scoot, one of the Thompson twins, or Nick Smith or something, because this is not encouraging. But
Or
going,
don't forget Cason Wallace, really good prospect, really good defender. Check him out. I like him a lot. You familiar with him, Frank, by any chance?
No, I'm not a draft guy. I'd only
I'm not
care about
either.
the draft right before, after the season's over. I have no idea who these. I know obviously
Yeah.
the top fives, but
You'll
nah,
see
I'm
him.
not
He's clamps on defense. So
Okay.
look out for him. Yeah.
okay, so going for centers. Okay, you have what I think will be 38-year-old Al Horford coming off his big deal.
Ooh.
I think that's
That
too
work.
much for me.
Well, it's
Probably
like,
too old.
they'll have 70 million cap space. If they get him like a
Yeah.
1 year deal and they just like, let's make the playoffs, you can throw him in back at 5. Maybe. No,
He's
what you
too
think?
good. He can't play back, bro. That dude's he's a
He's too
stud,
good.
bro. Like,
You're
yeah,
right, I
I just, yeah, he's too good. He's like too good. I would love him on the team.
Yeah.
I'll bench Sengun for Al Horford right now.
You think he's
Like,
going to
but
be as good next year?
even if he drops a little bit, that's still like high IQ defense, 3-point floor spacer. He can pass. He can post. He's
I
pretty good.
start him on the Rockets. Move Jabari to the 3, or is that talking crazy? What do you think?
Nah, I mean that'd
that
be
would
a
work.
top 15 defense to me.
Yeah,
Put
yeah,
it,
I agree.
insert him.
Okay, so we got Miles Turner. I mean, that's a yes from me. But
Yeah,
I
that's
doubt
it.
he's gonna
Yeah, that was the
play.
one
He
center
would-
I knew was going to be in that class. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's one of the guys that would have to start as well. He's too good to be
Yeah.
a backup. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steven Adams.
Oh,
Yeah.
Off the bench, I would take him because
yeah, I would take
his
him. I kind of
experience-
just described
his
that. So
experience.
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Starting
would
at
hesitate a little bit though because he's not a lob threat like that. His pick and
Yeah.
roll as a roll man isn't, and I want to see some Ty get because I think Ty really did a lot of his operating in that and with a pick and roll big, and that's really where he makes his money.
I mean, we would be going in the span of 2 years. We'd be going from Christian Wood screens to Steven Adams screens. That's gonna be
Yeah,
something.
that'd be like
Night and day.
going from Knicks to Schroeder almost. That's your
Oh no,
backups. Yeah.
Dennis Schroeder, dude, it's gonna be a meme forever now.
Goodness.
The GOAT,
We
Dennis
got we
Schroeder.
got
Yeah.
Brook Lopez at 36 years old.
He's still in the league. Where was he at last year?
Brooke is
He was
the
hurt for the entire
that's the
season.
Sideshow Bob
Oh,
one.
he's still in Milwaukee. Man, I forgot. My memory's
Yeah,
getting
it's gonna be
bad.
Is
Milwaukee.
Brooks Sideshow Bob or is that what's the other one's name?
Robert Lopez. I think that's him.
Okay, Robin Sideshow Bob.
Oh, I said Robert. Yeah, Robin. My fault. Robert
Robin.
Lopez.
Brooke Lopez, yeah, I think he'd be a good vet.
Okay, we got Ibaka at what I think is 35. If he's
He's
still in
Nah,
the
washed.
league.
He's
he's a
washed.
corpse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's washed.
Yeah.
I think this is an interesting one. Well, before him, Naronis Noel is someone I like as well.
Yeah. I would say
That's the guy Morey tried to get a few years ago from the Knicks, right?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah,
wasn't
and then
happening.
Clutch got
Yeah,
in the way
that's
or
the guy.
whatever.
Yeah.
And then we needed a big against the Lakers and we didn't have one. I'll forever be hurt by Clutch because of that. Next one is Jakopoto. To me, that's a yes as well.
Yeah, I like
The
him.
Rockets
He-
killer. Yeah, I'm gonna say yes on Yakob.
Yeah, he's a good player. A stud in fantasy basketball if you ever play.
That
Pick
dude
him up.
destroys us. Well, he destroyed
Yes.
Christian Wood every time. Like he
Yeah,
just
he's
turned
nice.
into like Tim Duncan when he came to Houston and played. So yeah.
Yeah.
We've got Jackson Hayes.
Yes.
Yes. That is
Okay.
the perfect.
That is what I just described. Yes.
I would give up. Listen, hot take. I give up a first round pick for him.
That's fair.
I
And,
would,
and
like-
he's someone with the Hornets that they have so much depth nowadays, and with Zion
Right.
coming back as well, someone's
Mhm.
gonna have to shake off of that roster. Either him or what's his name, Jonas Valanciunas. One of them will probably not be there because eventually you'd think that they'll both eclipse being coming off the bench, and so he's someone I like as well. And then we've got Gorgie Jang, who I like
Sniper.
him off the bench. Yeah,
He's a-
yes, exactly.
That dude-
That's what he's
That
known
dude
for.
never misses. I swear to God, he never misses a three.
I say yeah. I say yeah.
Yeah, he's tough. I never liked him, but yeah, I guess I.
Yeah. And really quick on him, I know Kelly Iko put him on the Rockets big board free agents to potentially sign.
Dang did
with
he
free
put
agents.
Dang on there?
Yeah. It didn't
Okay.
happen, but I would be
got-
opposed to it. Yeah.
I think we're finishing off. We got what's his name? Andre Drummond. To me, that's a no.
Boards.
That's
Yeah, I mean backup. Yeah, if on a
That's
minimum.
That's a stat
Ah.
patent legend right there.
Yeah,
Uh,
a rebound.
I want my younger player stat padding, not this guy.
yeah. That's a no. See, stat patent too much for me. That's a no.
I like him.
No, I feel you. No, realistically, I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, I mean he's a big body rebounder. You know
For
what I mean?
anything-
Just
Yeah,
for less than
15
the MLE.
minutes.
Sure.
yeah.
We've got Thomas Bryant, who was with the Wizards. He got hurt.
Oh yeah, for sure.
he's a dog, bro. Yeah, he can
he's
play.
tough.
He was.
That's
He's a
yes.
free agent. They didn't re-sign him.
So he'll apparently be a free agent this year. He'll just
Oh,
have
okay.
to
Yeah, I'm shocked because he was balling out of control before he got hurt. Like the dude was
Yeah.
pretty cold.
He's an interesting prospect as someone who's able to shoot as well. And he's was one of the first guys that as a prospect came in and was could kind of shoot. He was never a knockdown guy, but you know. And last guy is gonna be Nas Reed from the
Love
Timberwolves.
Nas Reed.
I like
I
him
love
a
Nas
lot
Reed.
as
That's
well.
a solid pickup. I wouldn't even hesitate to pick him up, to be honest.
And he'll be young still. He'll be like 25, I think. No, 24, even less. So yeah, he's someone I like a lot as well. So hey, there's if we don't get Harden, there's still some good options out there, and it'll be tough because they'll be taking minutes away from guys that are younger than them. But I mean, I'm sure the way they'll look at it next season is, well, we're trying to make the play-in, so you need to be a better player or be close enough and project to be a better player than whoever you're signing. And so I think a lot of the guys that we have won't get it. Will lose the chance come next year. They'll be the typical guys on the contenders that just play garbage minutes, and that's probably how it'll happen. But I think it's been a fun pod. We'll draw close here. Frank, go tell people where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ftank58 at apathetic. And on the Chop Shop, we have a YouTube page, the HCX Chop Shop YouTube page. We do podcasts, breakdown videos, highlights, everything there. I think we got some stuff coming up. We looking at some plays, looking at some of the stuff that we did in the last season, looking at some of the players, their best games. I'm going to look at some Jalen Green defensive stuff and just a lot of stuff to kill the void that we have these next 2 months. The fan base is going to be down bad, so all the content creators are going to be up to us to kind of fill it with content and arguments. So yeah, I'm going to try to
Yeah.
do my part in that.
Let's get all the hypotheticals rolling and get people
Yes,
triggered
sir.
over.
Cade better than Luca. Let's go.
That
I
was a
saw that
thing
on
over the
Twitter.
last week.
That was a
It's
real
like going
thing.
crazy.
Yes.
Brad, go ahead and tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, before I do that, really quickly, make sure subscribe to Frank and them's YouTube channel at the Chop Shop. They're almost at 1,000 subscribers. That's where that monetization kicks in. So go help them out if y'all can do that. For
Feed my
myself,
kids.
yeah, there you go. Need that. Need that. And Paulo, I want to thank you for allowing me to host. Don's absence. If you want me to, replace him permanently, I got you. But no, I'm messing up. But yeah, you can catch me on the Bradeaux and Will show on Clutch City Control Room as well. We drop every single Monday at 10 a.m. Central. And, on Instagram and Twitter, you catch me at Bradeaux NBA. I got a whole bunch of stats, as I've said. Enjoy posting stats for you guys. So you can check me out there if y'all want to see those. But yeah, Paulo, again, I appreciate you for giving me
Yeah,
the part.
appreciate you, brother.
For sure. And so to get back at Don, if you're listening to this and you're a part of Rockets Twitter, go and tag Don and say Brad's a better co-host than you are, and we'll see how many
It's
people
true.
we can
Nah, I'm playing.
see how many people we can get to tweet that at him and see. I don't even know if you'll listen to the pod back. So that being said, you can find me on Twitter at Paulo Alves NBA. That's PAULOALVES NBA. Everything I do from podcasts like this one to the live shows on Twitter Spaces, we find self-linked on there. You can find the pod at ClutchCityCR on Twitter. If you go on the description there, there's a little link tree with the YouTube link, the Apple link, the Spotify link. Everything will be found there. Make sure to drop it a follow to keep up with whatever we do. That being said, it's been a fun podcast. We'll check in with y'all on Tuesday again. Be safe and go Rockets.
Go Rockets.
Go Rockets.